we go. Now it's recording. Okay, let me back up just a second. So, 4 types of tissue, epithelial, connective, muscle, and nervous tissue. And we spent the majority of time going through epithelial tissue. We talked about the fact that glands in your body are epithelial tissues as well. The word I have here in red, avascular, means no blood vessels. So remember that in epithelial tissue there are no blood vessels. Talked about the difference between microvilli and cilia. Microvilli, remember, are going to be places where absorption of something is taking place. Cilia help move things. Okay. And then we got into all these junctions. This is where we started getting into the different types of epithelial tissue and the fact that they can either be in one cell layer that we call simple or multiple cell layers that we call stratified. 3 shapes, flat, cube-shaped, or column-shaped. So one cell layer of flat cells would be simple squamous epithelial tissue. And remember, on the lab practical, you have to write epithelial tissue. Now, I did find out on the lab practical, you only have to write the whole term epithelial tissue out once. After that, you can abbreviate E period, T period. So then you could say stratified squamous E period, T period. So of all the epithelial tissues, just write out epithelial tissue once. After that, you can abbreviate it. Same for connective tissue. You'll have to write out connective tissue once. After that, you can abbreviate it C period, T period. Muscle tissue, neural tissue. Neural tissue, there is only one, so you'll just have to write it out the one time. Okay? All right. Cube-shaped, 1 layer thick, simple cuboidal. Multiple layers, stratified cuboidal. Single layer of column-shaped, simple columnar. And multiple layers, stratified columnar. So that's kind of where we started with how we name these. And then we got into all of the different tissues of the epithelial kinds. And you should already have down what their structure is, meaning simple squamous is 1 cell layer of flat cells, okay? What the function is, where you find it, mesothelium and epithelium. And I'm not going to take the time, we already did these, so I'm not going to take the time to go back through all of this, but that should already be filled in. If you missed any of that, it is in the book, and it's right beside the pictures. It will have everything you need, okay? So if you missed any of those, just go ahead and go back. I think we did that. We did do this, didn't we, or didn't we? No? Oh, my bad. Okay, so now, this is the last one we did. All right. The last epithelial tissue we did then last week was this one, pseudo-stratified, ciliated, columnar epithelium. So there are some, it's sort of kind of stratified, which is what the pseudo means. Ciliated, meaning it's got cilia. What is the outermost layer of cells? Those are columnar, so that goes next, and then epithelial tissue. This is protection, secretion. You're going to find this lining of your nasal cavity, your trachea. These cilia are going to be moving mucus up and up and up and out, for instance. So you're going to find this kind of tissue pretty much in anything that is open to the outside that needs things moved. So if you think about your respiratory tract and all the mucus that you produce, especially if you have a cold or something, your body wants to try to move that out. So your trachea, your bronchi, your nasal passages, ciliate, moving that out. And then I think this is the last, maybe not. We did pseudo-stratified ciliated columnar epithelium. Yeah, I think this is the last epithelial tissue then. Stratified columnar epithelial tissue. So multiple cell layers. The outermost layer are the column-shaped one. Stratified columnar epithelial tissue. Where are you going to find this? You're going to find this in your parts of your pharynx, your epiglottis. You guys know what your epiglottis is? It's the little flap of cartilage that folds over your esophagus folds over your trachea so you don't get food down your windpipe. That's your epiglottis. Anus, mammary glands, and again, this one is for protection as well. Those are all the individual types of epithelial tissue. Now, glands are made of epithelial tissue as well. So the next little bit is going to talk about glands. Okay? Endocrine gland, exocrine glands. Did I mention the difference in those last week? Can't remember if I did or not. I think I did. Okay. You have two main kinds of glands in your body. You have endocrine glands and you have exocrine glands. Exocrine glands secrete things onto surfaces. So, for instance, sweat glands are secreting sweat onto the surface of my skin. It's an exocrine gland. Oil glands in my face are secreting, sebaceous glands, secreting sebum or oil onto the surface of my skin. So exocrine glands secrete substances onto surfaces. Salivary glands onto the inside surface of your mouth, saliva. And all of these exocrine glands have ducts. Not ducks, quack, quack. Ducts, D-U-C-T-S. I'll give you an example of one you can actually feel. Sorry, I have to take my mask down for this. Take your tongue on the inside of your cheek. Can you feel a raised area that is like a line that is going down the middle of your cheek? Okay. These are your parotid salivary glands. That duct is taking saliva from your parotid glands down into your mouth. And doesn't it always seem like that's always when you bite your cheek, that's always where you bite it? Because honestly, I think it's just because it's raised just that little bit. It just always gets in the way. But that's a duct that you're feeling in there for your parotid salivary glands. So all of those ones I mentioned have ducts. Okay? All right. Oopsie. Oh, I forgot the timer. Oh, forgot to figure that out. Endocrine glands, on the other hand, don't have ducts. Endocrine gland means ductless. Endocrine glands secrete hormones into your bloodstream, directly into your bloodstream. So exo has ducts onto surfaces. Endo meaning inside, secrete hormones directly into the bloodstream, no ducts. So insulin is secreted by your pancreas directly into your bloodstream. That is a hormone. Testosterone, estrogen, those are hormones secreted directly into the bloodstream from those glands, from your ovaries, from your testes. Okay, so any kind of a gland that secretes into your bloodstream is called endocrine. Whole chapter on endocrine system, and I don't remember if it is in 1 or 2. Let's see. Hormones. Yeah, I got everything there. So just remember, glands are made of epithelial tissue. I do believe you will see some kind of a question on that. There are different kinds of secretions. There are merocrine, apocrine, and then the next one is holocrine. So I just wanted to show you that there are 3 different methods of secretion. Merocrine, I have a hard time saying that word. Secretions. This is how sweat glands, saliva, mucus, meaning that there are going to be vesicles that hold the secretion. So you've got vesicles that are holding saliva, and then it gets secreted onto the inside of your mouth? Apocrine gets rid of cytoplasm inside of cells. So literally, the cells will release their cytoplasm, and then by way of doing that, secretes the substance onto the surface. Good news for you, neither of those two are on the test. This one is. Holocrine secretions kills glandular cells. Cells burst. Sebaceous glands cause acne. Buildup of excess sebum, excess oil. Think about acne, especially if you or anybody you know ever had a bad case of acne. And sometimes it creates pock marks, or you've got a big whitehead that explodes on your face, and then you feel like everybody in the world is staring at it. But literally what's happening is these glands, the cells in those glands, are literally exploding. So know that the holocrine way of secreting things is when the cells burst. Don't worry too much right now about the other two. These are just pictures of those three types of secretions. And again, holocrine is the only one that you really need for the test. Released by cells bursting, killing gland cells. Gland cells are replaced by stem cells. So, your oil glands and acne. Okay. The next one. Now, the last several slides are how these secretions get released. This just talks about the types of secretions. There are watery secretions, there are mucousy secretions, and then there are some that are both watery and mucousy. That's what this slide is saying. Okay? So if you think about sweat, most sweat, especially in our masks, I don't know about you guys, my lip sweats like crazy. Oh my gosh, I digress. I don't usually digress, but I have to tell you. Today was the second day of class at the high school I teach at, and we had to do an evacuation drill where we have to walk across the street to the middle school. Everybody's wearing their masks. By the time then we got back across the street to the high school, my whole face was sweating so much, my mask, and this is gross, was wet. Luckily, I had an extra mask. Had to change masks. It was like, oh, this is not fun at all. But anyway, that would be a serous gland type of secretion because it was real watery. Mucus glands, mucus in your nose, mucus if you have to hawk up a loogie. Those are mucousy glands. Mucus glands are in your respiratory tract, so those have just a different consistency to it. You guys all know what that consistency feels like. And then your submandibular salivary glands, which are these right under here. These are the ones that always get me if I have something sour to eat or drink. I always feel like they're just secreting a whole bunch. That's a combination of mucus and water. Okay, these one under here, submandibular. So it was first, how do they do their secretions? What are the different kinds of secretions? Let's see.
And we need to know the types of secretions.
Just holocrine. The only one you need to know is
not
holocrine.
The serous gland.
I mean, not right now.
Okay.
I don't know if you will later on, but for right now, we're good. Okay, I am really going to shorten this up because I'm going to skip this slide. And I lied. I got to go back one. Okay. So, the structure of exocrine glands, unless you're going to be a dermatologist or you're going to be some kind of a digestive specialist where you really need to know this, I don't think all these are all that important. I will tell you there is one on the test. And the one that's on the test is this one. The structure of the exocrine gland that forms pockets is called alveolar or acinar. There is a question about this on the test, on the exam. We'll show you here in a second. Highlight this one, do something. See this picture right here? This is the structure of simple alveolar glands. This, quite typically, this would be like an oil gland. So know that this picture goes along with simple alveolar exocrine glands. This is a lot like what your oil glands look like. That is the only one of those like 3 slides that I think you really need to spend any time on. And the only reason I think you need to spend time on is because I know it's on the exam. In the greater scheme of things, I don't think it's all that important. There's some of this stuff I just decided there's just some of this I don't think is all that important for you to know, so I'm going to skip over it because we just don't have that much time. If that offends you, I apologize.
No.
Okay.
Keep going.
All right. So just know that those 2 things go together. Make sure you star that picture. If you see that picture, know that it's simple alveolar. Okay? Good? Great. Moving on. Are we good? All right. Terrific. Okay. That's the end of epithelial tissue. So all of that was epithelial. Epithelial is long. Connective tissue is long. The other 2 are really short. Okay. So connective tissue, I don't know, the term itself, it's like, well, what do you think it means? Well, it connects something in the body. It does in a loose way. So like if you think about tendons, ligaments, sure, those connect things, bone to muscle, bone to bone, that makes sense. Blood is a connective tissue. You might think, how is that connecting anything? And the only thing I can think of as to why they consider it a connective tissue is because it is literally going through your entire body. So in one sense, it's connecting your whole body. So connective tissues connect epithelial tissue to the rest of the body, provides structure, stores energy, transports material, supports and interconnects other tissues, has no contact with the environment. So epithelial tissue, remember how I said it covers and lines? Most of it has some kind of contact with the outside of the body. Connective tissue, no contact with the environment. There is no connective tissue that comes in contact with the outside world. So it's all internal. So that's important to know. When I think of connective tissue, to be very honest, I don't think most of them look alike. With the epithelial tissue, you can kind of see how they, with the exception of maybe the cell shapes being different, they all kind of looked similar. Connective tissue doesn't look alike at all. The way I think of connective tissue is I think of it as Jell-O with stuff in it. There is, in every kind of connective tissue, there's what we call a matrix. Not the Keanu Reeves matrix, that was on all weekend, by the way. But it is like Jell-O. It is a substance that other things sit in. When I was a kid, for whatever reason, grandmothers tended to make green Jell-O with shredded carrots and shredded celery in it. Did you have that? Anybody ever have that? See, I'm so
my grandma Susie made that.
Grandma Susie. Okay.
Great grandma Susie.
But when I think of connective tissue, you can see I must have had a warped childhood because I'm thinking about this terrible, awful Jell-O. And then sometimes they put grapes in it too.
Yeah, fruit.
So when I think of connective tissue and this matrix with stuff in it, that's what I think of. The matrix is the Jell-O. Fibers and cells are all the stuff that's in the Jell-O. So we're going to talk about protein fibers and elastic fibers and collagen fibers. Those are like the shreds of celery and carrot. The cells themselves that make up connective tissue, those are like the grapes. So in my head, when I talk about connective tissue, I'm picturing my poor Grandma Ermlich's god-awful Jell-O. Okay? All right. No, that was matrix. Okay. So the type of matrix determines the function of the connective tissue. Now, sometimes the Jell-O can be really fluid, like in lymph, for instance. We'll talk about what lymph is later. It's real watery. It can be more of a gel, like Jell-O itself. Okay. It can be calcified, like bone, or it can be kind of syrupy, which drawing a blank on what would be syrupy. Syrupy? Is it worse than moist?
No, I'm thinking like syrupy in your body. Like that's
Oh.
disgusting.
I'm trying to think of a
Are you thinking blood? Or
I know. Yeah. What bodily function have you ever seen? It
Blood's
might be.
fluid, right?
Huh?
Blood would be like a
Well,
fluid.
blood would be fluid, but
We'll have
I'm
blood
wondering if
clot.
blood is more syrupy. Blood might be a little more I mean, if you had a vial of blood and a vial of lymph fluid, lymph is way more watery. Blood's going to be a little bit thicker. I'm thinking that might be where they get those terms. I wouldn't worry about that too much. Oops, wrong way. Okay. Now we're going to take, remember how we took epithelial tissue when we broke it down? We're going to do the same thing with connective tissue. We're going to take connective tissue and break it down into categories. There's what we call connective tissue proper, fluid connective tissue, supportive connective tissue, loose connective tissue, dense connective tissue. So if I were to do a flow chart and put connective tissue, I'd have 5 branches coming off. Connective tissue proper, its job is literally to connect things and protect. That is actually broken down into loose connective and dense connective tissue. We have examples of that in a couple minutes. Okay, I've got pictures to show you of that. Fluid connective tissue transports things. That's blood. Transports things. Supportive connective tissue, that's strength. So think bone. Loose connective tissue, we'll talk about this quite a bit. Adipose and areolar. Adipose is just a fancy word for what? Do you know? Fat, exactly. Bless you. And then dense connective tissue is like tendons. So if you look back, there's connective tissue proper. We'll get to that in a second, what the examples are, loose connective and dense connective. Fluid connective, supportive connective, loose connective. Oh, sorry. You know what I just did? Yeah, my brain. Whoop, my brain. Yeah, I know.
So there's 3.
There's 3. My bad.
Okay.
I am so sorry. That was my fault. I got ahead of myself. There are only connective tissue proper 3 branches.
It was weird because you're like, yeah, lucid.
Yeah, I know. That's completely my bad. Connective tissue proper 3 branches. So we're going to branch 3 ways. We're going to do connective tissue proper, fluid connective tissue, supportive connective tissue. Pardon my abbreviations are terrible. Fluid connective tissue is blood and lymph. It is a fluid. Supportive connective tissue, cartilage and bone. So connective tissue proper, what is loose? What is dense? Loose connective tissue means there's more matrix, less carrots, celery, and grapes. More jello.
So a lot of jello.
Lots of jello. That is, it's with me today. That's adipose tissue, that's fat. Dense connective, more carrots, celery, and grapes, less jello. Tendons. No, muscle is its own thing. Muscle is its own type of fiber. Tendons and ligaments are actually both here. Adipose and areolar tissue, tendons and ligaments. Okay, I apologize for the confusion. Are we good now? Did I clarify it enough? Do you need me to? Yeah, I do make mistakes, especially when I try to go too fast. Slow down.
You teach this at the high school too.
Mm-hmm.
Aren't you like tired and
Mhm.
tired of talking about it?
How about she's like, yeah.
My throat. Well, yesterday was our first day of class, and first day is like you introduce yourself, blah blah blah. But I hadn't talked that much in one day since March. We were all complaining today about what a sore throat we had, just from not being able to drink enough fluids and talking so much. And
You've been lecturing for like 12 hours.
yeah, it's been a long day. Wednesdays are a long day for me.
Aw.
It's okay. Why did this?
And
Oh,
we have lab all
My goodness, hold on. No, it's all right. I'll survive. Okay, are we still going? We're still going. Okay, it shut off. Well,
I can't wait to watch the video.
yeah, it shut off. So I'm like, oh no, she can't see that anymore. Okay, so those are the three. This is the weirdest picture. Now, here's the funny thing.
Oh my God.
This book that we're using is just an updated version, actually, of the book I use in high school. So these pictures are all the same. And I always tell the kids, I think this is the most god-awful picture ever. It's got, like, I think they said, let's see what all we can squeeze into one picture. So ignore that one. So I don't like
how
it.
they make my schedule at work.
Oh, yeah.
Patients can be fit in at once.
So here is a drawing of dense connective tissue, and this would be a tendon. Remember, tendons connect muscle to bone. We looked at tendon last week in lab. Now, within all of this connective tissue, there are 8 different types of cells. 8 different types of grapes. Think of it that way. There's fibroblasts, macrophages, adipocytes, I always have a hard time with this one. That one, number 4, that I can never pronounce. Melanocytes, mast cells, lymphocytes, and macrophages. And no, you don't really need to memorize all of them. Luckily.
Thank you.
I know. God. Know a little bit about all of them just in general. I will tell you which one you should really pay attention to when we get there. Okay. Fibroblasts. You always find fibroblasts in every type of connective tissue. There are fibroblasts. They secrete proteins. Okay, so tissues have proteins in them. Macrophages are what I usually call the Pac-Man of your body. Yes.
Are the fibroblasts found in all tissues?
Yes.
Or just all the connective tissues?
I'm sorry, all connective tissue. My bad. I apologize. Yeah, because we're in connective tissue right now. You find fibroblasts in all connective tissue. So on this weird picture,
There they are on the right.
fibroblasts kind of look like this.
Like glass shattered.
Yeah. Luckily, you don't ever have to label them, but you're going to have this kind of. But see how like this would these are real thin. Fibroblasts are a lot thicker. They've got one big nucleus in them. This is a different kind of cell, but these are real long cells. They're just kind of fine looking. They're just a cell. They secrete proteins. That's all. Honestly, that's all I know about them. Macrophages. These are Pac-Man of your body. What they do is they go around destroying debris. So they go through and they eat things that shouldn't be there. Pathogens, damaged cells. You find those in connective tissue. You're not going to find those in epithelial tissue. Adipocytes produce adipose. Yep, they make fat cells. Now, each cell stores one large fat droplet. Something I found out about adipose tissue, which I gotta find it though so I don't misquote it, which I thought was really interesting. So adipose cells, I don't know about some of you are, you're in much better shape than I am. But you know when you've added some fat to your body, right? Adipose cells don't divide. Adipose cells are what they are. When you have eaten way too many good things at Thanksgiving and Christmas and you can just feel the fat coming in your body, areolar tissue can mutate, so to speak, into adipose cell. So it's like not only did I have enough fat in my body anyway, now I've got a whole other tissue that can become adipose tissue. Man, that sucks. So that's how you get more fat cells. That's not on the test. It's just kind of a fun little fact that I just wanted to tell you. These
The words you don't.
mesenchymal, there we go. I had the emphasis on the wrong syllable. Mesenchymal cells, these are stem cells. These are only going to come into play if a connective tissue has been damaged, injured. So you got a sprained ankle, you pulled a ligament, you've got tendonitis in your elbow, you need some healing to take place. These are the cells that go to work then. Melanocytes, these are what give our skin color. Okay? Everybody is some shade of brown because of melanocytes. They also provide the pigment in our eyes. So that's why typically darker skinned people have darker eyes, fair skinned people have lighter eyes. Some of us produce more melanin than others. It is a cell that you find in connective tissue. There's a little exception to the rule here. These are also found in your skin, which is epithelial tissue. You don't need to know that for the test, but just thought I'd throw that in.
Isn't there something with like albino people that those are not?
They have them, they're just not working. Yeah, they have them, they're just not producing any melanin. That's exactly what it is. Mast cells, this kind of goes along with if you have an injury to a tissue. Mast cells produce inflammation. Inflammation is your body's way of walling off an area so that if there is an infection in a particular area, that infection doesn't spread. So that's mast cells' job. They also release heparin. If you got a lot of you in the medical field, you know what heparin is, right? What's heparin?
It's a shot that thins out your blood.
Yep, thins out your blood. So why in the world, if you have an injury, would you want your blood to thin out?
You don't want to get a blood clot.
That too, but let's say I have an injury, and where's my body going to get the pieces, parts to fix that injury?
Oh, so you can transport easier.
Yeah, from my bloodstream. So initially you want to thin out your blood for a short period of time so that you can get all of the necessary things in there, all the proteins, all the platelets, sorry, had a brain fart. Anything that you're going to need to fix that area, you want to get them there quick. Thinner your blood, the faster it's going to move. Now, the problem comes into when that heparin is released too long. But yes, you're also right. Heparin, you're given heparin if you don't want to get a blood clot. Right. Lymphocytes are just a fancy word for white blood cells. And white blood cells are part of your immune system. When we get to blood, we'll talk about that later. Microphages are cousins of macrophages. Microphages are released after macrophages. They're just another type of white blood cells. They just have different jobs than Pac-Man. Neutrophils and eosinophils are what they are. That's a conversation for a different day.
So micros release after.
Yeah, macrophages are released first, then microphages. So those are just all the different cells or all the different types of grapes you'll find in the Jell-O, depending on what kind of connective tissue we're talking about. Okay? No great big long questions on any of those, just know kind of in general. You don't have to list them, none of that. Okay? Just kind of need to know a little bit about them.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
I might be wrong, but the heparin?
Heparin.
Okay. So, if you're like an alcoholic, your blood.
What do you think?
No. We're
I'm gonna go home and have a beverage. No, I'm teasing. Go ahead. I'm sorry. It's been a long couple of days.
If I was you, I would.
But so if I was an alcoholic and my blood would be thin, would that be too much? So like if they
I don't think that-
or would it be like a different?
I-
would they still give you?
I don't think your blood is thin when you're an alcoholic because of heparin. Does anybody know?
I know.
Okay.
They do stop surgeries if you're an alcoholic and you have to quit drinking for so many days.
Yeah, but
Because your blood is thin.
it's thin, but I don't think it's thin because alcoholics produce too much heparin. I think
Well,
it's
would
No.
you still give the shot though?
Well,
Or-
they wouldn't do the surgery if you were an alcoholic. Because there was a guy, my dad's neighbor, they made him quit drinking because he broke his ankle and he literally died. Because his body was so used to that alcohol.
Yeah.
So he tried to quit to get his ankle fixed and he ended up dying.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
So
sorry.
I
That's right.
forgot my work. Sorry, I was just wondering.
no. Well, no. That's a really great question. I just don't have an answer for it.
It's okay.
I don't
My guess would be it has more to do with, for some reason, whatever's going on in your liver is causing your blood to thin out. That's just probably an uneducated guess, but I really don't think it has anything to do with heparin. if you jot that down, I mean, I'd be happy to look it up. I just,
I can look it up.
okay, fine, you look it up. All right. Okay, moving on. All right, so the cells are the grapes in the Jell-O. The carrot and celery shreds are fibers, and there are 3 types of fibers in all connective tissue. Where is sorry, I think I'm ahead of myself in my notes. I am. Collagen, elastic, and reticular. Great news. There's not a big question about this on the test, so we're going to go real simple. Here's what I would suggest. I would suggest you just write, or just, if you're just highlighting, just write a little bit about what collagen is. Collagen are long, straight fibers. And they are very strong. Tendons and ligaments have a lot of collagen. They're going to resist force in one direction. Okay, so you can pull on it like a rope, one direction. If you try to pull the other way, what happens to a tendon or a ligament? It snaps. So they're strong, but they're only really strong in one direction. That's collagen fibers. Our skin has collagen. Okay? Why do we get wrinkles and sagging as we get older? That collagen breaks down. Okay. Gosh darn. Ta-da. There we go. Oh, that I wasn't the.
No, you're
I
good.
thought I had my finger on here and I went all the way back. No, that's a tendon. You'll see here. Here are the collagen fibers. They're relative. I mean, I know it's got a little wave to it, but they're relatively straight. Okay, they're going to stretch in one direction. Elastic fibers are literally what they say. They're elasticy, and they actually have a protein called elastin. They can stretch, but then return to their original length. Ligaments connect bone to bone. So if you think about your vertebrae, so I'm bending right now, and when I'm doing that, my vertebral column is doing this. Well, the ligaments are stretching. Well, then I stand back up. I want those ligaments to go back the way they were. I don't want them to stay unstretched, otherwise my back would be all floppy. So that's where you would find elastic fibers. And they're right there. They're more they're like in a band, not a rock band or a country band, but a band like this. There's a group of them.
So then, like, elastic fibers are like an elastic rubber band.
Yes, exactly. So this is where you would find it. So this is not a great picture, but there's this is a ligament between these two processes of the vertebrae. So as if you bend over in half, you want them to stretch, then you want it to go right back. Okay. Reticular fibers, they're also strong, they're also flexible. These are the ones that can be stretched in lots of directions. Okay? Tendons can only be stretched in one direction. Reticular fibers can be stretched in lots of directions. What's kind of so if you think about, you've got your skin here, and then what's underneath your skin? There is your hypodermis, which is fat, and then underneath that will be muscle. But there's reticular fibers under there, which is what's holding your skin in place. Like, you don't want to be able to pull your skin and have it slosh all over the place. Reticular fibers keep things in place. They stabilize positions. That's good enough for all of those. Okay, yeah, stabilize positions. So, for instance, here is a picture of reticular fibers. I think this is the one last week. Remember how we were looking at those slides and I said it looks like cherry blossoms to me? I put the cherry blossom picture right there. That was reticular tissue. You find it in your liver. Provides support. It's a framework to kind of stabilize things. Liver, kidney, spleen, lymph nodes, bone marrow. Okay. This ground substance, the Jello. The Jello's clear. It's colorless, and it's a little bit viscous in connective tissue proper. It's not going to be hard Jello. It's going to be that in between, the in between phase of Jello where you're supposed to put the bananas in before it gets totally hard. That's kind of what this matrix is in connective tissue proper. And then, completely lost what I wanted to
So
say
this
there.
is a matrix?
Ground substance is just another term for matrix.
Okay.
Unfortunately, in anatomy and physiology, there's going to be similar words to mean the same thing. Don't worry about that one too much. Okay. This, however, this, however, you do want to know this slide. Embryos have connective tissue. The very first connective tissue that an embryo has is called mesenchyme. It's the very first connective tissue to appear. And it's like a big set of stem cells. From this comes all the other connective tissue in an embryo. Pay attention to what I have here in blue called Wharton's jelly. I had never heard of it before.
Me neither. I read it in the book.
Yeah, well, you'll want to know this, just FYI. Wharton's jelly is also called mucous connective tissue. It's a loose connective tissue. You find it in lots of parts of the embryo. And you find it in the umbilical cord. There is a question about that on the exam. Other than that, I don't really know much about it. I had never even heard of it before.
I was like, what?
Yeah. But here's a picture of embryonic connective tissue. Not something I ever even thought about looking for. You can see they've circled where the blood vessels are, and then they've circled where the stem cells are. Those are stem cells. That is from the umbilical cord of a fetus. This is from the actual embryo. So it's obviously a little bit different in the umbilical cord than it is, but that's what it looks like. I don't think we have that to identify at all. So, but somebody asked something.
It does. That's
Well,
an
it
easy way
does.
to remember.
Embryo and sperm. There you go.
There we go.
Okay, that was connective tissue proper. Now, loose connective tissue. Remember how I said that was dense connective tissue. Connective tissue proper, dense and loose. We're still on connective tissue proper. Loose connective tissue, these are 3 types in adults: areolar, adipose, and reticular. 3 that we look at in lab. We're going to talk about areolar. What I want you to know about areolar tissue is right here. Usually when we think of padding, I don't know about you, when I think of padding in a body, I think of fat. Well, padding in the body is actually in the form of adipose or areolar tissue. Areolar tissue is technically considered your body's padding. I've always said that your adipose tissue, your fat, is your padding. But it's not. And the reason that they call this padding is because this is going to separate your skin from what's below it. So you can think of it kind of like bubble wrap. You know, we want to protect what's in the box from outside the box. We put bubble wrap there. And that's kind of what it's like. Here.
Didn't you say that areolar turns into adipose?
Yes, it does. It can. It doesn't always. But in some of us, it does. Yes, I did absolutely say that. That was my fun little fact. It's not a question on a test. It's just a fun, terrible little fact. You are going to find blood vessels here. And the example of where you'll find it is in that subcutaneous layer directly under your epidermis and your dermis. So the layers of your skin, if you remember those from when you've taken before, it goes epidermis, dermis, hypodermis. Hypodermis is also called subcutaneous. That's where the areolar tissue is. This is what areolar tissue looks like. We looked at it. I think I said this is the one I think looks like flies stuck in a spider web. Somebody else, I forget what some of the other examples people were using last week. But that's areolar tissue.
Looks like that one game that kids play.
That
with
one
the
game
little
that
ball.
kids play. That's helpful.
You know what I'm talking about? And if it
Kerplunk.
fell
Oh, Kerplunk! I
Yeah,
forgot all
Kerplunk.
about Kerplunk.
I just
Yeah.
played it with my nephew last week.
Oh, that's so funny. This shows you all the places that you find it. Function is cushioning, and I'm going to speed up. Ooh, it's 7:25. I got to speed up a little bit. Okay. Whoops, sorry. Oh, this is also something to pay attention to. I don't know if you knew this, but there is a difference between white fat and brown fat. Great. This is wonderful. Remember, this is still, huh?
So not in today's society.
That's all right. White fat is what we usually think of as insulation. Brown fat is what in your body can actually produce heat. And you know how babies, they're chubby? You got baby fats. You know how you call the little baby fat? It's because babies have more of this brown fat in the upper portions of their body. My grandson doesn't. He's a skinny little guy still, but I'm sure he'll get that soon. But there is a difference between them. White fat is what we typically think of when we think of fat in the body. And it's not white. It's kind of yellowish. Okay, so know the difference between those.
What's MC mean?
Where?
White fat MC.
I don't know.
Okay.
Don't worry about it, because I don't know what it is. Okay, there's areolar. Okay. Areolar, we talked about.
Wait, where are we?
I just went backwards. That's why. Never mind. There we go. White fat, brown fat. There's adipose tissue. We looked at this one. This one I said it looks like marshmallows. Somebody else had something else they thought it looked like. We'll look at that again. This is just a different view of adipose tissue. Just depends on how they process it and what they stain it with. Okay. Speeding up. By the way, adipose cell, which made me think of fat, that's me in a hippo costume.
Oh my god.
It's a blow-up hippo costume. I just felt like putting it in there.
By the way, no big deal.
I actually have two. So when the quarantine first started, my sister and I had great intentions of, you know how all the people go around with the dinosaur costumes?
Yeah.
We were going to go around in the hippo costumes, and it just never happened. This is just kind of information just to have. None of this is on the test, therefore I'm moving on. Reticular connective tissue, you're going to find this like around your bones, around your joints. They don't make up bone, they don't make up joints, but they're going to be around your supportive organs. That's really all you need to know about reticular connective tissue. There's reticular connective tissue again. Yes, we already talked about it once a few slides ago, but it is here because it is considered a type of loose connective tissue. And that's the cherry blossom trees again. Oops. Okay. Dense connective tissue. Know that dense connective tissue is tendons and ligaments. Dense connective tissue, tendons, and ligaments. That's really all you need to know about that. There's a tendon. There's the drawing. There's the real one on the right. Here's where you find it, between skeletal muscles. Tendons connect muscle to bone. Point of attachment. Okay. Now, there's something called dense irregular connective tissue. It's similar to dense connective tissue. It's just a little bit different. The periosteum is a dense irregular connective tissue. Your periosteum is, I always think of it like a sock that goes over your bones. So like living bone is slippery. It's white and it's slippery because it's got a sock on it, and that sock is called the periosteum. It is a dense, irregular connective tissue. That's really all you need to know about that. We're almost done. Periosteum. Yeah, we're almost done with the connective tissue proper. That's what it looks like there on your picture in your book. Tells you locations and functions. Okay, moving on to fluid connective tissue, blood and lymph. So, blood and lymph. Blood carries what are referred to as formed elements. It's a really weird term. Blood is full of it's a lot of fluid, but then it has a bunch of has a bunch of cells in it. The cells in blood are referred to as formed elements. White blood cells, red blood cells, platelets. In general, they're just called formed elements. And you find those in blood. Blood is an easy one to identify, and remember, looking at that smear, are those all red blood cells or white blood cells?
Those are red.
Yeah, because the white blood cells are what?
Huge.
Yeah, they're bigger. Yeah, so like that slide right there doesn't have any
And
white.
if there's one of them, then there's
One's
usually
okay.
Or if there's more than one, we got a serious problem.
Yeah, if there's more
That's
than one,
what she
there's a
said.
serious problem. Okay. The last type of connective tissue is supportive connective tissue, and that's cartilage and bone. Cartilage is a little more bendy. Bone is not supposed to be bendy. It bends a teeny tiny bit, but there's more jello in cartilage than there is in bone. Bone is the jello that you left in the refrigerator since Thanksgiving. And it's all dried out and it's as hard as a rock. Cartilage is, again, avascular, no blood vessels. You are really better off breaking a bone than tearing your cartilage. Bone is vascular, lots of blood vessels. It will heal a lot easier than cartilage will because there's no blood vessels to carry all the important stuff there.
Wait, which one has blood? The bone doesn't have blood vessels.
No, bone has blood vessels. Cartilage is avascular.
Okay.
Bone is vascular.
And that's why, like, your ACL and stuff, that's
Oh,
such a bad
Yes,
thing.
yes. Anything that is avascular either won't heal at all or just takes a really, really long time to heal. Yeah, but bone will usually heal. One thing that I noticed as I was going through the test and going through your notes is there's a couple of terms that were not in the notes at all, but they're on the test. Lacuna, L-A-C-U-N-A-E. Lacuna is a space, and it doesn't matter where you put it. I put it under here just for the sake of doing that. Lacuna is a space where you find the cells that make up bone and the cells that make up cartilage. So for instance, bone cells are called osteocytes. In bone tissue, you find them in the lacuna. Cartilage cells are called chondrocytes. You don't need to know that right now. But they're also found in a space called a lacuna. The way I remember that is, to me, lacuna sounds like lagoon. And you find boats in a lagoon, and cells are kind of like boats. That might be a stretch, but that's how I remember that in my head. Yeah, so a lacuna is just a space in these two different types of tissue where you find the cells of the tissue.
Space in the tissue.
Where you find the cells.
Where you find cells.
Yeah. I thought of all the things they could have pulled out for the exam. I thought that was a little bit picky, so I wanted to tell you that. And then, of course, the cells are surrounded by the jello, which is the matrix. Okay. Moving on. Did I go the wrong way again? I did. Cartilage. Okay, 3 types of cartilage. Hyaline cartilage, elastic cartilage, fibrocartilage. Hyaline cartilage is what you find in most of your joints. Elbows, knees, shoulders, hips. That's hyaline cartilage. elastic cartilage right here in your earlobes. So think of elastic cartilage as being way bendier than hyaline cartilage. You definitely don't want the cartilage in your knee to do what your earlobes do. That's elastic cartilage. In all of your joints. Knees, elbows, hips, ankles. Fibrocartilage is between your vertebrae. You ever heard of a disc? Somebody has a slipped disc or a bulging disc. Discs are just cartilage. Discs are fibrocartilage. So those are the three types of cartilage. And I don't remember, I don't think we looked at all three of those last week in lab, did we?
I remember Highland.
Yeah, hyaline we looked at.
Because they look like eyeballs.
Yes. I don't think the other two were in there. As a matter of fact, I'm 99% sure they weren't. Okay. This is just a little bit about bone. I mentioned to you the word osteocytes. Those are bone cells. They're found in the lacuna. I had you write that on the other slide as well. So just kind of highlight, that's what you're going to need to know. Bone tissue, I mean, there's a lot of things to bone. This is slide 20, well, no, I don't know what it is for me. For me, it's 23. Nothing about that on the exam. Okay, there's the drawing that we looked at. That's the one that's easy to identify. This is just a comparison of cartilage and bone. Okay, now, we've done epithelial tissue, we've done connective tissue. Notice right here I left a space. The reason that I left a space is because membranes in your body are a combination of epithelial tissue and connective tissue. So you usually talk about membranes right here because they are a combination of epithelial tissue and connective tissue. And then after you talk about membranes, then you finish the next two types of tissue. My concern right now is that we are going to run out of time. 7:37. Okay, we are going to run out of time. So,
Can we stay in here longer?
I mean, I'm sure we can. We can.
Because this is our test, right?
Yeah,
So-
we probably should because I have a key to the lab. So I'll go fast. I'll really try to pare it down as best I can. Okay, there's 4 types of membranes. Mucous membranes, serous membranes, cutaneous membranes, and synovial membranes. And we talk about membranes here because membranes are made of an epithelial tissue plus a connective tissue. That's why we talk about them here. Mucous membranes line every passageway in your body that opens to the outside. Respiratory, digestive, urinary, reproductive. It lines every passageway that connects to the outside. That's all you need to know about that. Serous membranes. So serous membranes, if you remember back in chapter 1, we talked about there are membranes that line organs and cover line cavities and cover organs. Do you remember our discussion about that? We had visceral peritoneum, parietal peritoneum. Make sure you look back over those from chapter 1 so that you remember how to name them. One other little tidbit about serous membranes that you need to know is this word right here, transudate. Sometimes in an area where there's a serous membrane, if there is an injury or a disease, too much fluid enters an area and causes swelling. Well, that excess fluid that goes into an area and causes swelling is called transudate, probably transudate. The reason that that happens, sometimes because of a disease or because of an injury, the pressure in your veins and capillaries is too great, and so that's actually forcing excess fluid out of your blood, and sometimes that excess fluid isn't even picked up by your lymphatic system, and it stays in an area. So think about gout. Somebody has gout, excess fluid in a leg or something. That excess fluid is called transudate. Weird term I had never heard of before, to be very honest. But it causes swelling. By the way, the correct term for swelling is an edema.
Mhm.
So don't remember which way that, I don't remember which it's on the test, either as swelling or edema. Just make sure you know both. Okay. Cutaneous membrane is just skin. That's all you need to know about a cutaneous membrane. It's your skin. Another name for skin. And then synovial membrane is the fourth type of membrane. It lines joints, joint cavities. So there are synovial membranes that line the joint cavity of your knee, the joint cavity of your elbows, the joint cavity of your shoulders, so on and so forth. So it's just a membrane. So 4 membranes: mucus, cutaneous, serous, and synovial. They are made of epithelial and connective tissue. Okay. If you've ever heard the term fascia, yeah. Fascia's job, it's a connective tissue, but it doesn't really fit into any of the other places where we have information. What fascia does is holds things together. So, pull up a couple of pictures. Let me. So, see this white area right here? Okay, this is your trapezius muscle. So we're looking at our backs right here. This white connective tissue right here, that's called fascia. And basically, it's just trying to help hold everything in place. That is terrible. That's really small. I won't take the time to increase that size. But can you see? This is a muscle, okay? And can you see this little gray area around here? Mm-hmm. That is basically holding a bunch of muscle fibers together. And the way I describe muscles is it's straws inside of straws. So this is like a big straw that's holding a bunch of cocktail straws inside of it. Well, that big straw is fascia. It's just holding things in place. That's what fascia does. Okay, moving on. Don't worry about the 3 types. We don't have time for that right now. Okay, muscle tissue. We're almost done. 3 types of muscle tissue: skeletal, cardiac, and smooth. Skeletal muscle tissue is named skeletal because it connects your muscles to your bones. It's muscle to bone. It's the muscle that's attached to your bone. Remember, this is the one that has striations, the one that it looks striped. We looked at this last week. Most of the muscles you think of in your body are skeletal muscles. Your biceps, your triceps, your gastrocnemius, your hamstring group, your quadricep group, so on and so forth. Those are all skeletal muscles attached to your skeleton. Cardiac muscle tissue you only find in your heart. Only in your heart. No place else. Cardiac muscle tissue branches. So I think I talked about this when we were looking at the slides last week. You want to look for an area where it looks like the muscle fibers branch like this, because what's happening is Those muscle fibers are making sure that all areas of the heart can all talk to each other. So we're going to branch some muscles over here, branch some muscles over here. And then these intercalated discs are what allow all those branches to talk to each other. Smooth muscle tissue you find in hollow organs. No striations. Cardiac muscle has striations, smooth does not. So think about your stomach, your uterus, your intestines, your blood vessels. Hollow organs is where you find this. Skeletal muscle, by the way, is voluntary. You can control that. The other two are involuntary.
Wait, say that one more time.
Skeletal muscle is voluntary. You can control it. The other two, cardiac and smooth, involuntary. You cannot control them. Okay. Last type of tissue, nervous tissue. Nervous tissue, also called neural tissue. On the exam, you're going to have to write the word neural, N-E-U-R-A-L, on both the lab practical and on the exam itself. Neural, N-E-U-R-A-L tissue. I fall into a bad habit. I call it nervous tissue, and I shouldn't. Technically, the term is neural tissue. Brain and spinal cord. Two types of cells, neurons and glia. You don't need to know any details about those at this point.
Those are the two types of cells.
Two types of cells, yeah. Neuron, I have a picture, yeah. The neuron is the big picture. The glia are the little round purples. They're helper cells. Neuron is what does all the transmitting of information. The little purple glia are just helper cells. Okay, that is the 4 types of tissue. Whew. Last thing in our notes is about what happens when tissue gets injured. How does it repair itself? Okay, you need to know, there's 2 phases. There's inflammation, then there's regeneration. Yes, believe it or not, humans can regenerate. Imperfectly, but we can, to a certain extent, regenerate. If we couldn't regenerate at all, nothing would ever heal. So inflammation happens first, and these are the stages of inflammation. I think most people think of inflammation and swelling as the same thing. Swelling is just part of inflammation. Inflammation includes the area does swell, gets red, it gets hot, and it hurts. Why does swelling take place? So remember how we talked about the blood thins out whenever there's a tissue damage? The swelling occurs because the plasma, the water part of the blood, flows into that area, brings all the nutrients and white blood cells and everything else that we need to make sure nothing bad happens. Okay? Make sure you know those 4 steps. Or not steps, not
You
steps,
mean
sorry,
swelling,
4 parts,
redness,
I'm
heat,
sorry.
and pain?
The 4 things that make up inflammation: swelling, redness, heat, pain. Sorry about that, not steps, my bad. And then on this slide, what you need to know is that the mast cells, once there's an injury, the mast cells come in and bring a histamine. So know that. It brings histamine, heparin, and prostaglandins. So when there's inflammation, what do the mast cells do? They bring all those things in: histamines, heparin, prostaglandins. All of that causes vasodilation. Do you guys know what vasodilation means?
No.
What's it mean? Yeah, your blood vessels dilate. And why do they dilate? So we can get more plasma in the area faster. Huh? Yes. Okay, and again, that's going to create more fluid in the area, create swelling, yada, yada, yada. So if you're unclear about vasodilation and what it does, create swelling, you might want to look that up in the textbook. Oh my golly. And the others are just pictures. We're not going to look at that. We're not going to worry about that. You are welcome to read up on all that, but we are out of time. Whew! It takes a lot longer than I thought it would. Okay. It is, oh, look at that, exactly the right time. It is 7:50, baby.
Good job.
Okay. Let's do this. Let's pack it up, clean off the tables. Let's take the microscope down to the lab. That way we can do tissues down there. We can go over the parts of the microscope down there. And vacate this. I don't think, I mean, no class comes in after this. I just don't know what their cleaning schedule is like here. I don't want to be in somebody's way. Okay? Does that work? That. We're done. Ooh, it's 5.89 gigabytes.